Okay, this is going to be a little video about why are the 12th house people so strange or so different um, uh, than the rest of the folks. So I always tell people the astrology chart is 12 pieces of a pie. Look at the 12th house and see if you have planets there. If you do, chances are you're going to be, whatever planet falls in there, you're going to be, a little different than the rest of the people. And it doesn't mean bad, and it doesn't mean, cursed, and it doesn't mean not one energy is better than the other. But for example, I have four 12th house planets there, and they're in Scorpio. So, and they're the Sun, Venus retrograde, Neptune, and Mercury. So those are pretty big, major planets. And the people will always say to me, like you tell me one thing and I imagine it this way, but when I get there, it's always something odd or something strange. And when I was a single parent, I had three school-age children. I was either pregnant or breastfeeding for 5 years straight. And I got separated from their father, and I had a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So, I had a college degree. I went to work, and we were court ordered to live in the state of New York in the 8th Judicial District. Now, I didn't think anything like that could ever happen. I thought you lived in the United States, you freaking lived where you want. I had lived in 10 states and 20 cities and pretty much done what I wanted. And I was married at this point for about 9 years. But here's the law. If you live in New York State for longer than 6 months, the child becomes a New York resident. And they're not allowed to leave. New York State has what's called cardinal law. They guarantee the rights of both parents to visit that child, which is great, except for in the case of abuse or domestic violence, because what it does is dangle those children till the age of 18, stuck in New York State in front of the abuser. So, long story short, that law needs a little work, and I've been helping people for a while to work on that. But there are tons and tons of women who, most of them from like Puerto Rico and other countries, who came there, got pregnant, stayed longer than 6 months, had the baby, and tried to leave with the baby. And guess what? You're court ordered to live there till the child is 18, because daddy deserves equal rights to that child. Even though daddy might be in jail, daddy could be a gang member, daddy could be an abuser. So this law needs work, and that's just a little side note. But that happened to me. And I lived there with three children, and even though I lived all over, went to University of Baltimore, all my children were born in Maryland, and lived at the Jersey Shore, Conowingo, Maryland, all over. The children and I were court ordered to reside there in the 8th Judicial District. So, next thing you know, people, I built a community around, at that time, my church, and there was a shooting in the children's public school in the Buffalo City. Erie County Sheriff came into my two youngest children's school, and you're supposed to buzz to get in, and the office is supposed to look, but they let him in because his wife worked in the office, and it was a domestic violence case, and he shot his wife point blank in the office, school office, directly across from my daughter's first grade classroom. So I pulled them out and put them all in a private school, thinking they'd all be in one place and it'd be safer and there'd be more communication and less chance of random acts like that. Well, when people would visit my home, I lived in the Elmwood Village, and I had church friends, and I was painting, that began to paint, and I had art friends, and I had friends that I shot pool with. But when they would come to visit, they were like, "This is not an ordinary house with three school-age children." So I will tell you, with four 12th house Scorpio planets. And no, there were not skulls and crossbones and coffins and that type of thing all over. People think Scorpio is all about that, but not really. I'm a Sag rising, so We had sunshine and lollipops too. But I did work at an Army Navy store, and it was Toronto. Canadian owned, but they also had one in Greenwich Village. But I was a history major in college and I was obsessed with history artifacts, still am. So I worked for Army Navy vendor in an old historic building downtown Buffalo, and my job was that he would buy everything wholesale and he would bring it home or bring it to the United States. And it could be leftover stuff from Vietnam, it could be hand grenades, it could be t-shirts, it could be 5,000 horse splints. And my job was to go onto the internet and sell this to people in large units and make a profit. So, and I loved it. So we got to, my house did have a lot of military stuff simply because I worked there and my children got obsessed with the stuff. Plus, it was really cool and we were really into camping and kayaking. So, anyway, here's an example. My mom would always buy the children's pajamas, their school clothes, pretty much helped me, single mom working, but, anything for school, uniforms, clothing, raincoats, sports gear, all that stuff. So, well, they had tons of clothing, really nice clothing, and people would come to the house, and my one son would be walking around in a sheet. It had to be Egyptian cotton, 500 to 600 count thread wrapped around him. I think he had his tidy whities underneath there, but he would greet you at the door in a sheet. So people were like, what is this? Like a toga party? Like, where do they learn this? And I said, I have no clue. Like, we're a normal family, appear to be. We have pajamas, we have normal routines, but this is what the child chooses to wear. Now, I was into astrology then, but I was too busy with 3D world, trying to get a divorce, trying to keep 3 kids in school, teaching Sunday school, working 6 days a week, trying to just run a household. We did have a cat. We had a cat, a family pet, and I was busy. So with 3 kids, I'm sure you can imagine. So people would always say to me, what is it? Like your family's so odd. Like it wasn't that we were odd. It was that 12th house planet people, we don't see normal. We don't see I'm going to conform to this. This is the way it has to be. Like, I don't really care if the child's walking around in a toga. As long as he's comfortable, as long as, he's not offending anybody, I have no issues with that. Now, to me, I didn't turn a blind eye. I didn't think it was abnormal. I just figured, hey, he likes the cotton Egyptian sheets, and this is what he does. So, this particular child, I have 3, would carry a chemistry book around at age 3. The elemental chemistry book from a professor. And I was attending University of Baltimore studying history and jurisprudence, and my friend noticed that he loved Nova and the Science Channel, so she gave it to him. Now, he's got some Sagittarius in him. He's now a globetrotter. Hasn't been, he's been traveling for, I think it took him 8 years to get his education completed, and at university, and then he went abroad, and he's not been back since. And we never know really where he is, and he's just has that Sagittarius globe-trotting thing in him. Now, does he have 12th house planets? Don't know. I really never did my children's charts because I always felt like their energy was so obvious to me because, it was the three children and me. And we were together that way from, for 10 to 15 years. So to me, when you're living that close, and you kind of know their energy. I'm an empath and an intuitive, so I kind of just knew. But 12th house people, a lot of times people would come to my house and they would say, wow, I don't get it. Like everything that's supposed to be used for something is being used in a different way. It's repurposed. Yep, 12th house. We don't see things, we don't see, it's a lamp and it has to be 10 inches tall. We hang it upside down. from a string, and it is what we make it. So when people say someone has 12th house planets, what does that mean? To me, it means old soul. They're going to be different. They have had a lot of spins, and that's just my personal take on it. And they're back. Okay, usually they volunteered to be back or they've been chosen for the job because they have ancient skills that accompany them. Now, usually they're home, their partners, depending on what planets are in the 12th house, are going to be a little flippy. They make wonderful artists, musicians, writers, food decorators. I worked as a cake decorator at Wegmans, and I had a guy that worked with me, and he asked me to look at his chart. And I mean, his cakes were, Wegmans would tell him you have to do it this way and it has to be 4 ounces. And he would turn it upside down, put it on a pile of icing, throw some sugar sand on it, and make these construction site cakes that were the most imaginative, beautiful. It's 12th house planets. It can make you creative and see things, your perception, in a different way that other people, don't see. So if you meet somebody, or if you want to look at your chart and see, and I'm not saying it's an excuse to be weird or weirder, but it could be, it may be, and you might already be there anyway. But I think it's interesting to have a look at 12 house planets and see what you got, or maybe you have a partner that's extremely eccentric, or confounds your mind. If you look at 12 house planets, it gives you a little window to help understand somebody that might not be, totally straight on, inside the box, normal. And I think in this world, that's a beautiful gift, and it's worth a look. So take a look at your mom, your dad, your minister, that weird cousin, and just take a look and see if they have 12th house planets and see what you find. All right, have a great day. Bye bye.